Shut the door, shut the door, shut the door, shut the door! What the hell?
That was a good start.
Lethal Company is the real deal. I've spent an ungodly amount of time playing this game the past few weeks, and I've been racking my brain for an answer as to why it's bouncing around in my head like it's Cocomelon. The game isn't just popular because it brings in views and algorithms and your favorite streamers are playing it, it captures this perfect mix of a social game with a horror backdrop. Calling it a horror game is easy, but recognizing the role of social dynamics and how that ties everything together is key to understanding how I enjoy my time with the game. The funniest joke about horror games is that they turn regular people like you and I into A-list voice actors under the right circumstances. The primordial fear that you hear from everyone that plays the game is the byproduct of a tense atmosphere that doesn't lose its tension even if you have 7 friends at your side. If anything, that fickle sense of courage makes it easier to catch you off guard. I'm as skeptical as the next guy about the longevity of any new game, but Lethal Company isn't the promise of a game that will become good. It's a great game that's only getting better because of its commitment to developing its horror into something that doesn't lose its impact as your skills improve.
What could go wrong? Oh. Oh shit, a nutcracker. Okay, am I checking them? Don't stand still, Abel. Don't move. He can see you if you move. He can see you if you move.
Have any flashlight?
Don't move, don't move. He can't see if you don't move. Don't move, don't move. Don't move! Not the fucking mask.
Thumper, thumper.
No! What the
Lethal Company is about $10 in the US, so it's about $14 here because our currency sucks, but the barrier to entry is much lower than most flavor of the month games. Before diving into anything else, let's explore the setting and its mechanics. In Lethal Company, you're an employee at a mysterious company that has absolutely no weird things going on. The gameplay loop is very simple. You select a moon to visit with your team to scavenge items, and on any given day, that moon might be subject to various weather conditions that make your journey more challenging.
I'm white.
Do not.
Shut up, son.
Once you make your way inside the facility to get some items, numerous creatures of varying hostility levels will act as obstacles, making looting a little more complicated. Despite the overwhelming and chaotic nature of popular clips of the game, most creatures have some form of counterplay. Sometimes you need specific tools, other times you need to modify or engage in specific behaviors, and in rare instances you just have to throw a stun grenade and run.
Oh my god. We need to leave.
What is that? Is that the...
Everyone get out now before that thing winds up. You have to leave. It's cranky.
As the day progresses from 8 AM all the way until midnight, the threats outside of the moon base start appearing. Once it's around 5 PM, making your way back to the ship is a lot more complicated than it was at the beginning of the day. In the event that everyone dies, you keep all your purchased tools on your ship, but all the scrap you've gathered up to that point is jettisoned into space. You only have 3 days to scavenge, so try not to die on that 3rd day. Each moon has a fixed threat level indicating how difficult it is to carry out your work there, ranging from D all the way to S+. At the end of the week, you feed your items into this big and mysterious wall that seems to be feeding some kind of unseen creature with all the scrap you've been gathering, and any excess money you make gets you overtime bonuses. Its simple gameplay loop is necessary because the creatures inside of and external to the facility create these chaotic scenarios that no amount of knowledge or pre-planning can really prevent. It's borderline impossible to completely mitigate risk in the game even if you know what every single creature does. The coil head, for example, only moves if you aren't looking at it. This is obviously based on SCP-173, so you never want to turn around or your neck might get broken and you'll turn into a spring. It's easy enough to understand how to counter each monster, but sometimes you get pairings that are literally impossible to deal with.
Cornered, I know. I'll just... Oh, f***'s sake. It's over. Hi, buddy. Alright, turn me into a spring. I don't care anymore.
There are informal roles that people tend to play in the game. Some people like staying on the ship and playing Five Nights at Freddy's, opening and closing doors, providing useful intel on things like nearby enemies, turrets and landmines over the radio. And this playstyle is a little more passive and less engaging, so nobody really likes doing this in my friend group. So we usually have a couple people rotate in and out of the role as opposed to making one person do it every single mission.
What the hell happened? Wait, where'd your body go?
Other players might be on shovel duty, responsible for beating the crap out of enemies that can be killed, because that's right, some enemies are immortal and can only be addressed with stun grenades or schmovement.
It's blocking the entrance! No! 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 Why have you forsaken us? Why? No!
Then you have regular grunts who just run around and loot items. It's not really a role, it just means you aren't a specialist for the team. You don't have to waste a slot on a shovel, nor do you hang back in the ship. You're just the average Joe looting and smiling. Every mission has a base difficulty level called a hazard level, and weather conditions add a little more challenge on top of that. While I can't say for certain it's true in every single case, I've found that higher hazard levels don't just increase the quantity and difficulty of threats, it also raises the total value of the loot pool on any given planet. I'm the type of person that enjoys picking the highest difficulty whenever it's presented to me, so I tend to choose missions that are as excruciating as possible to put a smile on my friends' faces. To help you understand each difficulty, I've prepared some phrases that'll help you understand how to choose the hazard level for yourself. D stands for, did you see the latest episode of Jujutsu Kaisen? It went crazy. C means chilling, is always on the agenda. B means buddy, I couldn't smile any harder if I wanted to. And A means, after work, I might just ask the Bracken out on a date. S means Scooby-Doo is my favorite cartoon, that's why I don't mind running down these hallways. And S plus means Scott Pilgrim's journey is similar to your own. Choosing the difficulty of a given day is optional at first, but the exponential increases to your quota discourage picking the lowest difficulty planet because you might get abysmal loot pools and you don't really have enough items to meet your sales quota. Looting has its own challenges because picking up items makes you run slow and your stamina regenerates more slowly. So on lower difficulties, you might be running around looting things with less value per item. And you really don't want to upset the company and its bottomless generosity.
Welcome to our disciplinary classes.
No, you aren't mistaken in what you just saw. Lethal Company takes away all your resources if you fail to meet the quota at the end of the week, leaving you with nothing but the knowledge you've gained along the way. You keep the data logs on your ship and nothing else, so make use of that information because it'll ensure you survive each week. Progress wipes in a game can feel frustrating, especially in games with long grinds like Rust or Tarkov, but the gearing phase in Lethal Company is commonly completed within the first week. An experienced group of players can probably finish 3 days of work while gaining enough money to buy equipment and ship upgrades like teleporters. Even with just 2 players, the first week quota is comically easy to clear, so being a little greedy gets you a lot of overtime bonuses. Dying and losing everything is a simple yet effective means of creating harsh consequence for failure. Most risk in Lethal Company is associated with dying during a mission because you might get surprised by a combination of unforeseen events that put the fear of God in you.
What's it do? Oh, it's on your head now. Oh! Oh, Are you good? Oh,
Lethal Company's strength is how well the developer understands co-op gameplay. You're working towards a shared goal, but that's not really what makes it fun. Having a goal that's as easy to fail as it is to overcome sows a very tiny seed of anxiety in the back of your mind. When you're having a laugh and joking with friends, you're not as vigilant as you could be. When that friend stops talking mid-sentence and your hopeless question asking if they're still alive goes unanswered, that mild worry becomes a panic.
Oh, he's pissed off. Oh my god.
And that extensive metagame knowledge for each creature becomes useless because you don't know what's around each corner, you don't know the way back, and in that deafening silence, you're just as scared of having your neck broken as you are of disappointing the company and losing everything. One moment you feel invincible, the next you're reliving the chase sequence from Call of Cthulhu.
Wait, you gotta run.
I'm fucked.
This is a dead end!
Oh shit.
He's stuck, just go.
Swear? You promise? You promise?
Yes!
Alright.
Jump, jump, jump!
Oh my god, I'm When you die to a specific creature, you scan them for information to learn about their mechanics. As you learn the mechanics of each creature, you learn how to modify your behavior in a way that reduces your likelihood of dying in your next encounter with them. If each creature has counterplay, it's tempting to assume that knowledge will make the difficulty of the game trivial. This is false. Each creature imposes upon you a specific mechanic check, but if you're put in a position where you can't realistically overcome a creature's gimmick, or you're simply subject to several gimmicks at once, you're probably dead. If you're forced to stare at a coil head, you might not notice the slime that moves through your feet and kills you. Drop down now, drop down now. It's time, you can do it. Drop down. You're gonna get boxed in by the slime. You have to jump. While you're halfway across the facility, your friend who doesn't have a radio might not be able to yell loud enough to warn you about the jester winding up to kill you all. Death isn't meaningless in Lethal Company. It gives players time to think about how they died. Occasionally, you'll die to a bad teleport spot from the inverse teleporter, but most deaths are avoidable with communication and cooperation. Dying is supposed to be downtime that gives you time to reflect, analyze, and strategize. It's about discovering your preferred playstyle, where some people like to play conservative and super safe, others love to send 8 people through the inverse teleporter with no person on the ship as a contingency to mitigate their losses. Honestly, the weekly quota is extremely easy to cheese. A cautious group of players can just keep their excess items each week and play a really conservative way, rarely ever staying close to midnight. I'm not here to tell them that it's boring or they're less valid for liking that. Playstyle is honestly a matter of preference, and most people aren't interested in playing the exact same way as somebody else. I personally love taking on as much risk as possible and staying as late as possible, and this usually results in the death of all but 2 people. None of my friends get annoyed or frustrated with playing this way because we all see value in witnessing the horror unfold, even as spectators watching the last few people alive writhe in their skin. There's a mutual understanding between my friends and I that making things interesting by playing in a relatively chaotic fashion isn't a disinterest in the gameplay goals. It's a self-imposed challenge that's funny regardless of what happens. It's like adding a bunch of Hades skulls onto the game. Hey, yo.
Nah, close it.
Yo, mash that door.
No, close it.
Let me in. No! I'm on the ship. I made it. I'm on the ship. I made it.
Okay, open the door.
If you die early and get sent to the spectator mode, you get to have a laugh at the unfathomable horrors that your friends are going to see with other people who have also died. You get to sit in relative safely and have a laugh at the things they're unfolding because they're way funnier when they're not happening to you. When you're in the spectator view watching your friends who are still alive, it's kind of like reading a story with dramatic irony, because you know just how screwed your friends are. You don't get to tell them because the proximity chat heavily discourages metagaming, so you've got to ask yourself why sit in a Discord call when the voice comms in the game are perfect for playing it. I could ramble on about the voice chat for hours, but I'll save it for the next section. I love the escalating risk despite how hard that makes any given week. I love seeing people cautiously navigate their way back to the ship. I love seeing my possessed body wearing a cursed mask, turning the game into a zombie survival. The ability to create volatile gameplay sessions is the key to my own enjoyment of the game. The game remains funny for me because even if I've done the song and dance a million times, seeing that friend who's really panicked as the last person alive, that never really gets old for me. The bizarre and unpredictable chaos of the events that go on every time you play, it continually instills terror in people weeks after they've begun playing and they know everything that all the creatures do. And all that knowledge still amounts to nothing. Having a scaling weekly quota is just a backdrop. It's really easy to cheese. Every group of player will differ on how they navigate it, but I just use it as a generic guide for how much we have to scavenge each day. But my real reward isn't surviving the week, it's seeing my friends in pure terror. I don't go out of my way to troll them in super direct ways like friendly fire, but I egg everyone on to take unreasonable risks without pushing it so far that winning is impossible. If your party wipes and you lose all your scrap, it's not necessarily a death sentence so long as it doesn't happen on the third day of the week. Because if it does, it means you don't have a way to scavenge and sell because landing on a planet will use up one day. In simple terms, a team wipe on the third day generally means the run's over. Your upgrades and tools, they're all gone. I love creating chaos whenever I play Lethal Company because I don't hit people with shovels to kill them, nor do I lie about landmines or turrets. I dare people to stay way later than we need to, and I love charging in with like 3 shovels to beat the crap out of a thumper. To play in such a carefree and reckless way is to accept that death is inevitable. The moment you let go of the fear of losing gear, the faster you can jump into playing around with the silly little gizmos and gadgets. Instead of fixating on resource efficiency and risk mitigation, you will lose everything after a point, and if I live half as long to burn twice as bright, then I'll gladly take the gamble every single time, because I play horror games to smile and laugh. Why would death stop me from choosing to have fun in any given scenario? Speaking of cheese, there used to be a strategy called rail cheese because many enemies couldn't kill you if you stood on guardrails. Thus, people would jump on the railing after kiting a spider or something and beat its head in because you couldn't take damage while you were standing on it. This was nerfed out of the game quickly with patch V45, and I genuinely appreciated the nerf to rail cheese. It wasn't a no fun allowed balance patch, it genuinely stood against the design philosophy of the whole game. If you trivialize risk with rail cheese, you don't have any risk of death against a whole set of enemies. While that's great for efficiency, it makes sprinting through hallways far less risky in the back of your mind. Anyone that played a lot in version 40 probably remembers that forest keepers used to be borderline impossible to escape. Version 45 came with a nerf to them that supposedly makes them easier to avoid, and I have noticed that it is kind of easier to avoid them, but I don't have detailed patch notes to know exactly what changed about them. Before version 45, maps like March and Vow felt borderline impossible after like 5 PM because I'd always find myself struggling to make it to the ship because they'd be camping outside the ship and spot me from really far away and then kill me. So I tended to avoid them before now. Combine that with any weather effects and you can imagine how impossible it felt to play. In addition to the balance changes, we got a new seasonal enemy in the form of the Nutcracker, and we got cursed masks called Tragedy and Comedy that could hijack your body, and you can find presents inside the moon bases, which when open, give you a random item. Of all the additions, I think my favorite one is the Cursed Mask, because if you have it on, you can basically leave the facility even though you are dead, and your teammates can teleport you onto the ship, basically damming the mission. We also gained a ton of new tools and ship upgrades, and even a shotgun if you manage to kill the Nutcracker. I genuinely like that the developer didn't just nerf rail cheese and tell the player to deal with it, because it was justified from a design standpoint. For everything that we lost, we actually gained a lot more in terms of content and survivability. I commend the design philosophy going on here, and it makes me really excited to play each patch as they roll out. Let's be honest, cheese strats in games are funny, but if you leave them in the game for too long, it kind of discourages players from engaging with the core mechanics, and you might create a situation like Phasmophobia in its early days where you could use a thermometer to figure out where any entity was, and farm a lot of money on the highest difficulties of the game before the total rebalances to the gameplay loop. Overall, it was a pretty good patch. While death has you reflect on your playstyle, Lethal Company's proximity chat tips the scales on the atmosphere of the game. One minute you're smiling and laughing like those two fellas from Jujutsu Kaisen, the next you're painfully aware of just how easily your life will end. In competitive games like Halo, Arma, or COD, proximity chat has this reputation of being an outlet for toxicity. Sometimes it creates the funniest interactions known to man, and other times you're about to hear every single slur in the English language, even though you didn't really say anything crazy. Proximity chat may as well be all chat in League of Legends if it was spoken, because its novelty in competitive shooters generally isn't due to its wholesome interactions with a guy you killed. While I don't have strong feelings about whether it should have a place in gaming, I will say that it has created some insanely fun moments in Arma and DayZ for me. In co-op focused games, proximity chat is about immersion. People sound quiet when they're further away, and they sound extremely clear when they're right in your ear. If you apply decent voice modulation to make voices echo in long hallways and everyone sounds worse when they're talking over the radio or underwater, you've got something special on your hands. Wait, watch me gaslight everyone. Guys, I think I hear a coilhead and a jester.
You're fucked up, bro.
Voice chat is like a web that ties everything together in Lethal Company. How you're gonna play, who you're paired with, all these other elements are communicated constantly through your microphone. From the moment you touch down, you're talking about a lot of different things. The game makes you roleplay an employee pretty efficiently. You talk about silly little topics in your downtime, and you're constantly going back and forth about how to navigate the moon, asking if there are any enemies nearby, and there's this recurring noise from each player. While game developers rarely criticize how players enjoy the games they've made, I imagine the lead developer feels pretty good seeing that the voice chat in Lethal Company is so essential to the experience. And if you look at the virality of its clips, nobody's really going to metagame or try to use Discord instead of the in-game voice because it's essential to maintaining that atmosphere that you see in those clips. Hearing that constant dialogue and engaging with other members of the team feels like a safety net that gives everyone a little bit of courage. Unfortunately for the players, this fleeting sense of confidence creates blind spots where you'll get caught slipping.
I'm white.
Do not.
Shut up, son.
Yeah, we're white.
Sonny.
Yeah, for anyone watching, I'm white. I'm not.
I'm white.
Unless.
We're all white.
No.
What happened to playing the game?
What happened to
We're
the
playing
game I love?
And we're white.
I like Shawshank Redemption and Skrillex.
That's a good movie irrespective of race. What do you mean, man?
Oh yeah, he's down the corridor.
You're insane, by the way, bro. Oh, he's pissed off. Oh my god.
Hang on. Hey, yo. Well, he's guiding us the correct way. While talking about your shift that you just had at work, you might forget to check behind you. When you're making a joke, you might sprint over a landmine. And if you were just wasting your stamina sprinting everywhere, you might find yourself unable to escape turret fire. Being able to communicate with friends on proximity chat and over the radio is as much of a strength as it is a risk. You can unintentionally troll because you're taking things a little too easy, and that's not even frustrating, it's honestly hilarious.
Oh, that's not good.
Oh my god.
There's a really funny element to being put in situations that are scary at first, but hilarious in context. People love seeing how they died in the most insane ways. It's the people that survive that feel the most fear. The more things go wrong, the higher the stakes become. Oh, and when you die, you're in a voice channel with all the other dead people, and it's a hilarious spectator mode that lets you laugh at your mates from a distance, because they're given God's toughest battles, like a little zoo animal for your amusement. More than anything, the ability to gauge how far someone is from you by their voice is a core mechanic of the game. If they're cut off mid-sentence, your fight or flight response activates, and you start asking questions. Your senses sharpen, and you check your corners, you listen for threats, you stop talking. As the situation evolves through death, through silence, through confusion, how you communicate through voice chat changes. You stop telling that story to any surviving members, and you radio in to see if someone's dead. Your demeanor gradually shifts from a carefree scavenger to a hyper-vigilant survivor. Just like the average horror movie, you truly have no idea what you're in for until you're in the thick of it. When one person dies, it's honestly usually pretty funny and everyone laughs at their expense. People who learn of their death usually find it funny as opposed to distressing. The party's morale stays high, and if anything, it probably gets higher because they've had a little chuckle at someone's expense.
What?
Oh, 2 fire exits?
Oh, easy. Let's get it.
Easiest fire exit in my life. When more people start dropping, things get a little more serious. If you're a group of 4 people, that's half your eyes gone, and any death will leave the last person in isolation. Proximity chat is a double-edged sword. For every joke you can laugh at, there's a horrified scream with no context. It shifts the gears on the atmosphere of the game because as much as you can screw around with the boys, you can also quickly instill panic as you rapidly repeat Jester, 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 letting people know that they are screwed. While everyone is chatting away and communicating the places they've explored, it's easy to forget that you're playing a horror game and not something like Gary's mod. The moment you see things like landmines and turrets, everyone becomes a little more vigilant. Your comms shift from light-hearted banter to more concise callouts to warn people of impending danger. The shift in atmosphere is not necessarily gradual, nor is it subtle. Oftentimes, a catastrophe can unfold in mere seconds, and that comes with a jarring change in your demeanor.
If there's a giant or some dogs, I'm gonna scream.
Just sack what you're holding and run then.
Fuck
You know
no.
Let me be the sacrificial.
The devious cup just got a little greedier, bro.
The devious cup just got a little greedier. No, don't bring it this.
Run!
No, don't bring it this way, you fucking fool! What the fuck was that?
The worm, bro. The worm got you.
There's a fucking worm? The horrified screams in Lethal Company are not isolated actions that occur in a vacuum. Hearing that friend scream in terror is hilarious until the threat kills them right beside you. When the ghost girl pops someone's head and she starts haunting you without notice, you might try to check constantly to see if there's a bracken, speeding up the rate at which she kills you if you don't hear her haunting you. It might have been funny to see your pal die, but now you're left holding the bag. As quickly as you laughed, you're now faced with certain death, and a hazy memory of the turns you took to reach the place you're in now. That ceaseless banter and camaraderie becomes displaced with deathly silence, and complete ignorance as you walk forward without a single inkling of help. Maybe the eyeless dog spawned outside the ship, so the guy watching the map can't talk to you over the radio. That ability to talk over voice chat is just as much of a boon as it is a source of fear and anxiety. I could talk forever about how voice chat facilitates the atmosphere through strategy, discussion, and banter, but the best thing about voice chat is honestly that you control people with useless information, or jump scare them around a corner like an older sibling would. I love that people expect you to use comms the right way, which is why trolling your friends in a one-off round on Eclipse is super effective. I love telling people that there's a jester or a coil head inside whenever I'm trying to have a little laugh, and I'll usually tell the person next to me that I'm going to troll everyone over the radio. You have no obligation to use the voice chat in the most idealized fashion, and creating a little more chaos for a little laugh is honestly one way I keep things fresh. It's easy enough to just try and win every time you play, but it's always funny to try and set up a domino effect of problems without directly killing anyone. While trolling is often juvenile in nature, it's only as effective as it is because the player subconsciously understands how the atmosphere shifts through voice chat. If you act a little panicked and tell people there's a call head inside the facility, they're expecting a mannequin moving at light speed to appear and snap their neck. To successfully troll your mates, you need to feed them useless information, selling the lie by acting scared, showing that you have a good handle on how the game cuts through your lighthearted banter with a reminder of your mortality. It's this funny concept of death shouldn't be scary, but I'm still terrified, and you leverage that to spread panic amongst your mates. It's easy enough to see that verbal communication ties everything together, but I feel like things that aren't said go a long way too. The animations and aesthetic of Lethal Company look silly as hell on one hand, but they kind of invoke a nostalgic feeling of games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1 era. When you see a silly little guy in his spacesuit running towards you, there's a mutual understanding that danger is following closely, even if no words are spoken. You share tense looks on faces you can't see when you're trying to stay quiet as those eyeless dogs roam past you, inching your way closer to the ship deep in the evening, trying not to set off the sound triggers. When people leave the facility without dropping items or saying anything to you, there's a lingering suspicion that your buddy knows something they aren't telling you. A person sprinting away abruptly from an area you know they haven't explored completely is the first sign that something is wrong. Despite being a horror game by all accounts, Lethal Company's strongest asset is its social dynamics. It's obvious that talking with friends is a form of socialization, but the implementation of its voice chat is so good that it instills a genuine sense of confidence that is gradually eroded by the numerous deaths that are unavoidable. Playing games with friends can often be difficult, and I'm one of the only people I know that plays a game like Apex Legends, so Lethal Company is a good excuse as any to get a bunch of my friends on and say, hey, let's have a good session on this tonight. You're all signing up to play this thing that is deeply terrifying in some cases, but very funny in the same way. And when you get to reflect on just how bad things got, there's an element of humor that isn't easy to explain. When you're on the verge of death, it's genuine terror. When it's someone else on the verge of death, it's pretty funny as someone who's spectating or just listening from afar. And that feeling of being trapped in a corner is a common experience in the game. Even if you're the type of person that loves to be facetious and ironic all the time, the game forces you into situations that are deeply uncomfortable, and even in spite of that, a lot of people unlock that inner shonen protagonist. They push themselves to try and transcend all odds despite having like 5 dogs, 3 giants. People still think they can save the situation. It seems like a weird assertion to say that good voice chat makes people want to push beyond their limits, but that's the power of lasting immersion. The gameplay goal of selling enough things is honestly very flimsy and uninteresting. But in the context of trying to play something with their friends, people tap into that clutch gene for whatever reason, even though they understand that everyone playing is ready to lose everything. Death may be inevitable, but even the most cautious and cowardly player can have the heart of a lion when they know their friends are counting on them. The stakes aren't serious, and people don't really get toxic or annoying when you fail to meet the quota. I feel like my friends always understand that we have this really clear idea of how to win, which is why it feels so good to make it by the skin of our teeth, despite the odds being stacked against us. giant sounded like Roro. I know you're thinking that eventually your friends will get bored of the game. I probably will quit the game one day. Whenever a game gets stale, your recourse is either quitting the game or finding new ways to make it fun. In my case, I've been trying out mods that add novel features like silly emotes, hardcore scaling, custom events, and of course, new enemies and mechanics. Modding communities make any game immortal. They're honestly the reason Bethesda are so atrocious at making complete RPGs but get a free pass from criticism, because their passionate fans deploy stability fixes, meaningful gameplay additions, and of course, egregiously horny mods. If you've ever played Baldur's Gate 3, you know how ugly the clothes are in that game, so modders carry the hell out of addressing that specific shortcoming. Being able to mod a game to your liking is why many RPGs out there are infinitely replayable. I will say that modders haven't added sex to Lethal Company, yet. But there are a myriad of interesting gameplay additions that make the game harder. I personally use a mod called Brutal Company because it adds randomized events to each mission that range from moderately annoying to unfathomably sadistic. If you think that dealing with an eclipse is bad, try dealing with an eclipse while the entirety of the facility is laced with landmines or turrets. The game's extremely easy above 4 players, especially when you realize that Titan, despite being the hardest moon in the game, is comically easy compared to Dine or Rend. Since the game only supports 4 players by default, any mod that increases the player count kind of trivializes the first 8 weeks of the game to a comical degree. So you add in Brutal Company because it increases the baseline difficulty of every moon. It adds additional challenges on top of the fact that you still have to deal with weather conditions. Ever since I added this mod, I found that we rarely have missions where it's basically Minecraft on peaceful mode. I've had a ton of sessions where we went inside the mansion at Rend on vanilla and literally nothing happened. We came back with thousands of credits without breaking a single sweat. It wasn't the fault of the vanilla game or its scaling, it's mostly because we used mods that give dedicated slots to flashlights and radios, so we could always carry 4 items. And more importantly, it didn't feel devastating to carry a shovel since you'd have 3 items with only 1 slot to carry something else. The game only accounts for having 4 players having 2 item slots each on average, so uncapping the player count kind of increases the rate of looting, heavily trivializing the game in large groups. Other friends have expressed the same frustration with large lobbies without Brutal Company, so adding the mod in keeps things difficult and appropriate for a group of like 8 people playing the game. I also like the mod called the Mimic mod. It's kind of stupid in the long term, but it basically adds a bunch of fake fire exits that'll eat people with a jump scare if they don't figure out that it's fake. I personally find it pretty funny, but I don't recommend putting it in if you're playing with people who don't handle jump scares very well. The counterplay to the Mimic mod is that there's visual tells indicating something fraudulent about the door.
Yeah, it's the real one. Use
Okay.
Alright.
If you can...
Yeah!
Yeah, yeah!
Oh! It's not the real one!
Holy f-
Actually, you knew. It is pretty funny for trolling your friends, but when it comes to gameplay, it's honestly artificial difficulty at best. There's legitimate counterplay, but it's kind of contingent upon knowing the signs, or at least knowing where the real fire exit is. The Skinwalker mod is a fairly popular audio mod that lets creatures in Lethal Company record lines from all the players in the lobby. You might find yourself asking someone a relatively innocuous question, and then you receive a nonsense answer, giving away that something's wrong. It honestly reminds me of hearing lines repeated in Japanese horror. There's something uniquely terrifying about hearing a response that just makes no sense in context. Look away.
Yeah.
Oh my god, fake Gabe. I heard fake Gabe talk.
I found some and I brought it to the front door. Somebody brought it back to the ship.
The hell was that?
Keep it? Okay.
Well, Thed's not even here. He's disconnected, so... I know that's not a real comm. And if you're interested in adding a hilarious audio mod that makes things very eerie, the Skinwalker mod will make things very uncomfortable, especially when there's a lot of enemies. Something that's unintentionally scary about it is that if people disconnect from the lobby, it can still pull from voices of players that aren't in the lobby anymore because it creates a new audio file every time you start a session. When a game's development cycle hasn't fully caught up with the demands of the player base, modders take things into their own hands to help everybody shape the game into what they would like it to be. I think modding communities make games immortal. I still love games like Gary's mod to this day, and I could update it today and go screw around on things like Dark RP, TTT, and all these other modes that were popping off when I was really young, because crazy as it is, people still love the game. People still make new mods, and they still love running around as characters like Hatsune Miku. The fact that Lethal Company is only 2 months old and has such an active modding scene is fantastic for the game's longevity, because you can just add what you want to see in the game, especially if it improves your enjoyment or ability to play it. It's ironic that I'd spend so much time waxing on about a game that's made me laugh so much as it's made me scream my lungs out in the middle of the day. But Lethal Company effortlessly blends its immersive proximity chat with its unpredictable gameplay loop to keep things fresh every time you clock in for work. When things start feeling trivial and the metagame reduces risk into the ground, players have a wealth of options with active modding communities that give you a wealth of options for expanding the game in ways that matter to you. If it's hard to distinguish yourself from one another, you can add in more cosmetics. If you want to have silly expressions that feel incredibly ironic despite the spooky setting, you can add in more emotes. If you want to play with a lot of people, there are tons of lobby mods. If the game is too easy, especially above 4 players, you can raise the stakes, add in hardcore events, and discover a wealth of cruel yet enjoyable challenges. Despite being in early access, the voice comms and the social nature of this game are already perfected. The developer shows a keen interest in balancing the game for longevity without overcorrecting so much that its base difficulty feels unreasonable. I don't think this game is just a promise of something good like most early access games. It's a $10 buy-in for a great game that's only going to get better. It's not just easy content as some skeptics might think, it's a wonderful game that's really easy to love. In my Halloween special, I expressed my disdain for overanalyzing horror settings and concepts into the ground, and I said that despite my disinterest in horror as a content engine, I still love the genre, and this game reminds me why. Clips of this game stretching to the far reaches of the internet don't make its horror less effective. I think it has the unintended effect of disarming people who know about how the game works and how to counter things, and just how unprepared they are despite thinking otherwise. You tell yourself, it would never happen to me, and you scream all the same when you're cornered and killed. I love this game a lot, and it's capped off a wonderful year of gaming for me.
No! Sunny!
What got Sunny?
I've been Meatman, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any thoughts, leave them below. I'm usually playing this game on my Twitch channel with friends when I'm not busy, and you can find my other social media below. Also, feel free to join the Discord, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye.